It's very interesting. After 9/11 and stuff, the government had decided that we needed to kind of coordinate the efforts of all types of local, state, federal organizations in terms of collecting information on international and domestic terrorists. And so part of that was they developed these centers, okay, around the country. I don't know if people even know that they have these centers that exist. They've been around since 9/11. The scary part about these centers is that they, again, we talked about it before, Lori. The word terrorism is very interesting because the definition of it is so wide based that it can sweep up a whole bunch of different people in its realm. And so one of the things that I found that was frightening was two different stories, and we're going to discuss one of them. I'm going to let you bring the first one in because it deals with traditional black universities, historical black colleges.
Well, the study was saying that the traditional black colleges are not necessarily a hotbed, but they're saying that it's an environment that is conducive to possible terrorist activity.
So this specialized center, which is actually in Virginia, took a look at several of the traditional black colleges in the state of Virginia and thought that this might be a possibility, a hotbed for terrorism. At least that was the words they used in the particular article that we read. And so, I mean, I'm concerned about that because we're talking about institutions that have over generations traditionally, where we were disenfranchised for some of these white institutions, educated and developed the minds of young black people in this country. Now that's a possibility, a place where people will become terrorists.
Well, I think it's obviously a biased study. I mean, I think it has the slant of whoever wants to look at things in a certain way, and I don't know whether they think that people of color, because the mentality that people of the terrorist nature, whether they're Arab, etc., are darker of skin, that they figure they could fit in more in that environment. Whatever they're coming up with is just it's slanted. It's just a bias. And the centers that you're referring to, the fusion centers,
right,
are important in terms of being able to share information. But again, it is something that's going to need some oversight because, the whole purpose of these fusion centers are to be able to share information from, I think there's three major categories. You're talking about law enforcement, public safety, and then the private sector.
Right.
So they want all of them, if they have any information that'll help, in counterintelligence and all of this information to be shared in the event that somebody looks at one situation and somebody else has information, that they have the opportunity to do it. Now the information, my understanding is that it's not just a central depository of information that
right,
anyone can grab. It's actually a center that will combine the information from these various areas if it becomes necessary. The only problem that you run into is who's determining if it becomes necessary. I know one of the articles talked about Virginia's actually has a lawsuit because some of the information was shared with the FBI that, against groups that didn't really, warrant it. And then there was another non-violent group, that was just
right,
having a peaceful demonstration.
Right. The issue that we're talking right now is dealing with Baltimore in Maryland. And it was dealing with these two different organizations. I think one was a peace organization or whatever, rallying for the right for people to stop the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan or whatever. And I forgot the name of the two organizations that were involved in it. But the bottom line was that the ACLU, which everybody likes to call this particular leftist group, which decided it wanted to kind of look out for what they call your civil rights, whatever, sued to find out through the Freedom of Information Act what was going on with some of this fusion center. And they found out that they were documenting, the FBI and other organizations were following, infiltrating these organizations and stuff and reporting back. And after they found out there was nothing going on, they still decided they wanted to still maintain surveillance on these groups. Does that sound familiar? Black people, we know about surveillance of our groups or whatever. It was called COINTELPRO or whatever. And so maybe when the people talk about, we just need to get over some stuff, maybe you need to get over your trust in the government, because the government can't be trusted. They need to have oversight, because there's always someone's political interest is in mind, and it's not yours that they're looking at.
Yeah, and it's not clear whether or not they were doing it for bias reasons, whether or not they really thought they were terrorists, or whether they're doing it for funding reasons, because, you know, these agencies are funded, you know, based on whatever studies they conduct. So it's interesting that they, after they did determine that there really was nothing going on, that they continued the surveillance, which is kind of a waste of taxpayers' money.